So hi again, welcome to the quarterfinals. We are playing against House of Mana MTG, and unfortunately I didn't had any information about what I expect here from the opponent, so I needed to keep a good hand in the blind, and I think this hand here is totally reasonable against all of the decks in the format, or all of the decks we are able to probably beat in game one. Could be a bit soft to Chalice of the Void or so, but we are on the play anyway, so we can ramp into the Riot Arbor, and then the next turn we can play a couple of creatures and draw a card with a Visionary, so I think it's a very solid hand. Do you have another opinion about it, Inigo?
No, I think on the blind I will also keep. We have acceleration. We have a bunch of mana in heritage and cradle. Uh, I just like the hand. If it's we have reclaimer. If it's some kind of maybe painter or maybe something graveyard related. At some point we can also fix the black with a reclaimer for grist. So yeah, I just like the keep a lot.
Okay. So here trying to ramp, and the opponent uses Force of Will. So pitching Murktide, so this indicates most
Yeah.
likely Delver or Death Shadow.
Oh, Death Shadow. Yeah, I was going to mention it. The deck of the week.
And then they went for the Volcanic and the Delver Secrets, so relatively clear. So Delver. So okay, they prevented the start with the Force.
Yeah, probably what I take by that is probably they don't have
Removal.
bolts, so they're trying to interact on another axis. So I think I'm pretty comfortable here playing their. I was going to say maybe the reclaimer first because we really want to get Bog early or access to it. But yeah, I guess you're going to play it anyways
Yeah, we
once you
need to
know.
exactly, and we also need to play into days. And okay, if they're days, then our hand is garbage anyway. So, but here, if they have days, I at least want them to days this and not the reclaimer. But still, yeah, okay. We need to resolving the cards here. And now
Wow.
he plays a second Force of Will.
Yeah, that's great for us. That's really good. If that
Usually,
Delver doesn't flip immediately, they are in very big trouble. I would say.
yeah, but I wanted to have the Reclaimer here on the board, to have the board presence and to produce additional mana with the Cradle. So here I have only one creature, so the Cradle doesn't really do that much. But
I agree, but still
they,
making two times 2 for 1 is very good.
in general, yes, but the problem was I didn't have a good way to punish the opponent for that because I wasn't able to resolve the Christ because I didn't
Yeah,
have a black mana source here.
yeah, I
I
can see
needed.
that.
I was very soft to the wasteland because I don't have the second source here, and I also can't really use the glimpse. So if that would be on the battlefield, and they kept the force for the glimpse in the next turn, then I would have been in a very good spot, I would say, and then I was able to keep their graveyard in check and get in. But now look what happens here. So here they just show lightning bolt. And wastelands, and
Oh my
destroying
god.
my
Yeah,
cradle.
that's
So here, and they already know that they have lightning bolt, so um, yeah, very problematic. And then I prick with the next draw, don't find an additional land or mana source, so my hand doesn't do anything. But if you remember the starting hand, I would say it's a very solid hand. In the most situations against Delver, it creates a lot of mana in the round 3, for example, or even in the second round. But as were aggressively mulliganing here with the accelerations, yeah, I didn't had a way to use the power of the hand at all. So, and here they play the second Delver. So then on the second draw, I fortunately had the land then.
Yeah.
Was able to play the Visionary.
Do we get
Still,
value? Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
What was my question?
you need
I
to
think
get
now we
value
have to
here.
play to win, right? Not to
Exactly.
survive.
You can't play around Wasteland anymore because we need to expect that the Grist has to be used in the in the next turns. I would say probably most likely even in the next turn. We need to hope that this doesn't transform, and then
Yeah.
we are probably able to kill the insect here. And it depends on which cards we draw here now. So in this case, it was only once upon a time, so very unfortunate. But okay, we had, and here we see the second bolt.
Wow.
So they have double force, double delver, double bolt, and wasteland. So yeah, I think the opponent just needed to randomly click on a couple of cards and didn't really need to think about anything here. They just had the best possible draw, I would say, and they could have let some cards resolving, and then it would have been impact on the play. But here they just need to attack a couple of times with the Delvers. So yeah, when they are blindly flipping, it's very hard, especially because I was missing the land drop in the previous turn, and maybe there would have been a world where with the land drop in the third turn I could have get the game, but on the other hand they also have double bolt here, so they can easily burn me out, and if I handle one of the Delvers here they still have 6 damage, so yeah, I don't think that I can do anything different here. Maybe if I change the order of the cards I play in a different order and the cards are countered in a different way, then there could have been a world so that I play the Queen Sun Zenith for 0, for example, later. That could have
Yeah.
been a difference, but
I have to
that's
say that it seems to me that it was not so. Uh, uh, it was a big part of luck, I think, because opponent just revealed. Probably Wasteland was already in hand, but flipping Delver to Bolt in that situation was extremely relevant. Uh, so yeah, I think you played good, and you just played the best, the hand allowed you to play so far.
yeah. And depending on the cards the opponent finds, so I think we have a very good evidence here that it's not that unlikely to just lose to their best draws, and not so
Our
here.
draw wasn't bad, but it was not the best draw against Delver. That's like I can tell that much.
Yeah, exactly. So if I had also Shepherd, for example, on turn 2, so that would have been completely different. So they top decked the Bolt, that was sure. But if one Elazar Shepherd would have been in the beginning of the game, they couldn't have countered anything. So, but still, I think the hand was very good, also against Delver, because I had the ramp, I had a couple of creatures, I had the Cradle, and I also had the removal. If they, for example, try to go for a turn 3 Murktide or something like that, I could have dealt with that. So yeah, but it didn't line up very good, I would say. So the opponent had exactly the good opposite of my hand and was able to answer my hand. And yeah, especially by top decking the 2 bolts, be able to destroy my creatures or to burn me out. So yeah, was a bit unfortunate. But here at this point, I don't see any possibility to play around that. Especially because I want to start with this hand, I want to start by ramping, because if they don't have the removal or aren't willing to counter, then I have a very explosive turn 2, and then I can try to go for the glimpse on turn 3 and have mana on the board and a couple of creatures or reclaimer. But here they were also very fast with the double delvers here, and both of them were blind flipping, so
Yeah, usually
that
this is
can
the
happen.
one of our classic weaknesses. I would say multiple fast flyer hand. We usually lose to that, so it's just happen sometimes. The matchup is really close nowadays.
Yes, it can happen to the or with the double DRCs. It can happen with the double delvers, or it can also happen with the Murktide if the Murktide is unanswered. So here we are in game 2, and what do you think about that hand?
I think it's great. We have 2 mana plus the Cradle, which we will deploy last, probably, depending on what threats they play. We have removal in Strigmo and uncounterability with Shepherd. I really like it.
Yes. We also, and when I seeing the hand, I thought, okay, I have a very good feeling about that game, and I hope it works a bit different than before. So yeah, it's a very solid. So we can probably cast the Endurance. And here I like to start with the Wirewood Symbiote, because it's a good way to protect the Shepherd. And if they have the removal, they can answer the Wirewood Symbiote, and then next turn I can cast the Shepherd, and then there's a good chance that I am able to play the Endurance uncounterable. So here so far so good. So they're just pondering.
Interesting, they bottom the Delver here. They bin the Delver with the Surveil.
Yeah, that's true. So they
What do you take from that decision? Maybe just to build up the to Delirium?
Delirium, yeah. Or they also have another threat in their hand
Another threat in
already.
hand. Yeah, that's my read also.
So here they are attacking, and yeah, it's not really reasonable to block here because they already have two
No, our
in their
creatures
hand.
are more valuable than them, and they are telegraphing they have another threat. So
And they can
the
also bolting, and then bolting the Wirewood Symbiote, for example, and then they have Delirium, and we can't even trade with it. So here I waited with the fetching because I wanted to save the black mana open for the Shriekmaw later, and didn't want to get the Dryad Arbor, so keeping that up for the black mana was very good for me, in my opinion. So here there are a couple of possible lines, I would say. So unfortunately, I'm not able to hardcast the Shriekmaw already,
yeah, yes, one
but
mana.
I don't think I totally need to, especially because they don't have Delirium and I have the Endurance. So here the question is when
One question: would you have played? What? Why did you choose to play the Cradle instead of the Fetch here?
yeah, because I planned to play the Endurance next turn or next.
You want
Next
to play
play
around days?
was days wasn't really the factor, but I still wanted to keep the Fetchland up.
The Fetch uncracked. All right. Okay. Okay.
Exactly. So with the Fetchland Uncracked, you have the option to get Dryad Arbor later or the Black Source. Sure, I could have then went for double fetch and get both Bayous, and then I was also safe with the Black Source, and then I could have kept the Cradle. But on the other hand, there's also a chance where I have to play the Bojuka Bok next turn. So if I do that, then I have to keep the cradle even longer. So, and I think there is the best upside if you do that now and then have the fetchland up. If they are wastelanding me, that's not big of a deal because I have so many mana sources here anyway. But maybe the reason to keep it to hardcast the Shriekmaw could have been relevant. The question was,
Yeah, my
when do
question
you
was more in the
cast
line. Wait,
Endurance?
1 second, Jörg. My question was more in the line. Is it really worth to expose the cradle here? Because of the value of cradle itself, right?
Yeah, but the
So
value of Cradle is already reached when I have the opportunity to cast the 3 mana card without having 3 mana producing lands already. And I think if they are wastelanding here, that's totally fine because I
we
don't
cast it
have
anyways,
a good
right?
way. I don't have a good way to use the mana anyway, except of hardcasting the Shriekmaw. But that was usually saved, I would say, for later. Or on first, I would say I wanted to keep this for the next threat or for a Murktide. And then the question was when to use the endurance. So, and here maybe it was a bit too obvious that I have the endurance. So, but still, okay, they can't really ignore it. They weren't really able to um, play the Murktide already. And then I thought, okay, it doesn't really help if I do it preemptively. And if they had Bolt, for example, then they could have destroyed the Shepherd in response and countered it anyway. And I thought that I just need that he attacks and I eat the DLC with the endurance,
Mm-hmm.
because if I don't do that, he can just refill in 2 rounds. Okay, I have the Bojuka Bok then, but probably there is a good window for the opponent. If I nuke the graveyard now, then in the next turn they only have like 3 cards in the graveyard or even 2. And then in the next turn they have much more cards in the graveyard. And I don't find the window to use the Bujukabok and um, exile the cards. And also here I thought, okay, I have an encounterable endurance. The chances that this works are okay, I would say. Are not very high, but are okay. But
Yeah,
then,
they would need to use a lot of resources to make the endurance counterable because they would have to bolt the shepherd. We can bounce the shepherd, so the bolt is wasted, and they
yeah,
they can maybe they cannot daze it. They have to force it. So that means in order to stop one endurance, they need to use 3 cards.
yeah. And now, uh, as expected, here comes the bolt. So they first bolt the Wirewood Symbiote,
Hmm.
and then the Shepherd.
Wow. So it's a five card. God.
Then it grows to Delirium also.
Yeah, and they get then they force
And then they force with a Brainstorm. And then they only have 2 mana left, 2 cards left in
2
their
cards.
hand.
Yeah,
And they keep the card on the top. So the whole
probably more
board is
life.
away, the endurance is away, and sure I have a protection here because Bog prevents the Bergtide for sure next turn. But suddenly all my good cards are away, and
Yeah.
I think if that resolves, the game is over on the spot. But they have the double combination of uh, okay, they just needed 1 bolt usually because they could have just targeted the
Target the shepherd. Yeah.
shepherd and then I would have bounced and they still have countered it here. But then, okay, I go to 15, no big problem. They play the ponder. get the card they
So,
wanted.
what are you thinking here? Are you thinking of instantly bog? Because I think it's pretty obvious. The card on top should be a Murktide, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so, are you going to let it resolve and then Shriekmaw it, or are you thinking on trying to delay it?
so here I have a couple of options. So I didn't fetch yet, so there wasn't a way that I got the Dryad Arbor and Hardcast to Shriekmaw. So usually having the Shriekmaw was reserved, a bit like for a big
Or
threat like
Murktide, yeah.
Murktide. On the
Yes,
other
I
hand,
agree.
Murktide is off the table because I already have the Bog. So here in my, I thought I have two good lines, I would say. So one line would be going for Green Sun Zenith for one, getting Elvish Reclaimer, for
Mm-hmm.
example. This would be a 1/2 Reclaimer, though. And also after that I played this, maybe he even counters, then I can block him. But then I thought, okay, just blocking him again is with the DRC on the board, he just needs 2 turns. So here I thought, okay, here I just handle the threat and then bogging him, and then he is miles away from the Murktide. So, and then I still have the Green Sun Zenith for the next turn, and then I can also get, for example, like Endurance or the Reclaimer as a 3/4, or even other things. So here
What do you think? Okay, let me
you
propose
see another line.
another line. Mm, mm, I think okay, so I think it's very likely they have Murktide in hand and not a lot of interaction left because they used a lot of it trying to fight for the endurance. So I know it's a risky play, but probably it's also a high value. Letting them resolve the Murktide and then so actively letting them do the Murktide, and so we could play second fetch, crack the fetch, crack the first fetch also. So then green sand for one, reclaimer would be 3/4, and don't play anything else. Then they will play the Murktide the following turn, and we have the answer for Murktide, and we have still another bog for if they try to grow the graveyard again, and the current graveyard will be used for to feed the first Murktide. What do you think?
Um, yeah, probably this line would have even involved that maybe I should even hardcast the Shriekmore then next turn. If I got the Reclaimer now, there could have been a way to hardcast the Shriekmore to have it on the board, not just evoking. Then I couldn't probably, or yeah, probably couldn't use the Bajuka Bock, but yeah, I still face the Dragon's Rage Jungler then. So taking, so with the fetch I go to 14, taking 3. After the combat they play the Murktide.
So it would be actually it's two fetch because we want to play the reclaimer
So
as a
I'm
3/4.
virtually at 10 life
Virtually at 10 life.
if
Yeah,
I
that's
use
it to
already
go
all
probably.
fetches. And then they still have the DRC. So then we have a non-delirium DRC against Elvish Reclaimer, which doesn't have that use anymore because I already have the Cradle. And also
And the bog, yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah, you're
he's
right.
probably able to just need um, a setup turn, and then the next turn the DRC already has Delirium again,
Delirium again.
and
So
then I
here I
need
like that here you point
Endurance.
out that you are keeping very close attention to your life total. So that's something I don't usually do that much, and I probably should be doing. So I
So
like that.
with 15 life, it's not that urgent
Problematic.
or
Yeah.
problematic. But on the other hand, I think the if that works, he doesn't have a threat on the board, and he's not able to cast the Murktide here if I exile all of this graveyard and it's on of the battlefield. So I opted to just evoke the Shriekmaw and keep the Green Sun Zenith up for next turn. And that's also worked. So here I needed to play into Daze. So if they Daze, I still can block him, preventing the Murktide. This worked. So here, then after that, I just exiled the graveyard.
Yeah. So yeah. I actually agree now in hindsight, because what you are doing this way, you are stranding the Murtide in their hand. They don't have a good mechanism to fill the graveyard again, and you are stabilizing your board by removing the threat, and you are at a very healthy 14 life. So I after your explanation, I think I agree with your line.
And
It's better.
next turn, I can search for the Elvish Reclaimer, for example, or even Christ or another Endurance. And I would say from this point, they are about like 3 turns away to get in the reach where they could use the Murktide.
Murtide. Yeah.
So about like 2 or 3 turns away, probably more 3. But now, second DRC.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And
Double DRC?
suddenly he had DRC and then he just played Expressive Iteration.
Okay.
So
Oh, one.
they
There's a Murtide.
they milled it away, and then
Oh my
the
god.
Wasteland wasn't that bad, I would say.
No, because we already had from 4 mana with the reserved fetch in hand.
So
Interesting.
here I made a strange play.
Yes, I think
I
so.
opted to not play the Once Upon a Time into the days. Um, Found the endurance here, which was okay. So here now, then I had the good chance to just play Slam It into the days to just get the either the Reclaimer or the Shepherd. So getting an additional land here and then getting the Reclaimer.
Yeah, makes sense. So we can keep endurance as defense mode, and reclaimer on attack mode.
Yeah. And here still, again, now they have Delirium.
Yeah,
It's just one turn and they
it's
have already
the power of
Delirium.
DRC really here.
Yeah,
The rebuy expressive here.
yeah. And have a Murktide. They have the Murktide. They had the Murktide indeed, but
Wow.
probably found the DRC off the top because I believe that his hand, when he had 2 cards, was Murktide and Expressive Iteration. Well, maybe he top decked DRC, but maybe he top decked the Expressive Iteration, and suddenly he had a 4/4 in play, and put my Elvish Reclaimer on the top of my deck with a Submerge, and also have an Expressive Iteration on top of their own deck. Then here I wait until they do something because I know that it's Expressive Iteration. Then here I respond, okay, that was a technical fault. I should have exiled this here, but
Yeah, because it doesn't grow the first Murktide anyways.
exactly, and then it can prevent a future Murktide also. So here now he has a 4/4 and had card advantage. Then I need to find a Christ or another endurance to just stop the Murktide Regent. But here, yeah, I didn't really find that's a winning line to block here. So it's very likely that they can burn me out. But they already had used 2 lightning bolts, which are in exile. But still very likely that they can win by burning me out. But here I don't think that it makes really sense to block, especially with finding an additional endurance. I can keep it in check.
Yeah, it just so strong. The speed they can refill the graveyard, so strong.
And
What would
here
we need here? We need an endurance, really, right?
we need endurance and we need that the Delver doesn't flip
Or a
also.
Strigma, and yeah.
Shriekmaw would only help if the Delver doesn't flip, but the opponent played Ponder before he played Delver and
Yeah, so the flip is almost guaranteed.
not shuffle, so it's 100% guaranteed, I would say. And here then useless Reclaimer from the top. So
Yeah,
the choke
and
point was like I decided to clear the board to restart the game, I would say. And the opponent had the unexpected DRC, and they were able to refill their graveyard very fast and had also very fast delirium again. So they still had a very fast clock. And
yeah,
then
I think here what I take from the game is maybe we have to reserve the Shriek Mouse for the Murktides, even if sometimes it's at a high cost of life, because the other threats we can deal with endurance or reclaimer through Jukabog, but Murktide is only and exclusively answered by Shriekmaw and Grist, so probably we have to make it an exclusive use for those cards. What do you think?
so in general, I would agree to this statement, but I think there are some exceptions. So if
Oh,
DRC,
definitely.
if DRC is
If it's going
pressuring
to
your
kill
life
you, if
total,
it's yeah, yeah,
it can still just bolt you every turn like that. So if you just ignore it and you don't have a way to stop it, usually you should have because there are the access to the Bajuka Bog where you can get out with a Reclaimer and just trade with the creature, or you just have an endurance and then they can't attack through it anymore. So this should be possible in general, but I think in this case it was a very strange game, I would say. So on the one hand, they just cleared my board away and then they forced my endurance. So if the first endurance goes on the battlefield and checks the DRC, the game is immediately over. They can trade with a bolt on top of that, but still, so very strange outcome of the situation, I would say, because I was relatively sure that the endurance will resolve, and it doesn't really give me that much if I play the endurance earlier because they had the mana up. Then they probably didn't have the double bolt line with handling the Wirewood Symbiote first and then the Shepherd, but then still they would have been able to counter it, and this is still a 3-3. And especially after they find another DLC, I think um, going for the Shriekmaw line didn't really. If I would have waited with the Shriekmaw, if they for the next turn, for example, or at least to hardcast it and not evoke it, then sure, if they had a Murktide, a big Murktide, I have targeted the Murktide, and then their graveyard would have been away for now. But to be honest, they have then two of the DRCs, and probably then only need half of a turn or just one spell, and they are live again, and then I can still don't handle the flyers until I find an additional endurance.
what do you think? Do you think we need an extra answer? Maybe one more removal in the sideboard, or are you comfortable with playing two Shriek Moss as removal only?
So from my perspective, I would say the amount of removal is usually enough, and it also helps in the current configuration because it maps with the sideboarding very well. So we are able to keep the main deck intact as it is and just trim the nature order package. And we don't need to cut any core cards by that, like Heritage Druid or even Once Upon a Time. So yeah, I think the configuration is well suited for the Delver matchup in general, but if I see both of those games, so I would say that the opponent was very lucky. Um, they had very good matching hands for my hands and for my decisions, and
Agree.
not really other ways to avoid that here. So mm, playing the endurance earlier in the one turn could have been a difference between those cards. Not really sure if they already have access to the force or the bolt or the second bolt, but it doesn't help. They just refill their graveyard with the DRC, so priority should somehow be to keep the DRC in check, because that really helps you to avoid getting Murktided. Then if you yeah, if you just keep the DRC in check early, probably with like a Shriekmaw, and then exile their graveyard in the next turn, they can't Murktide. So that's one way, but on the other hand, if you waste your removal and then they play a 7/7 or an 8/8, you only have two turns then to get not burnt or killed. So I wouldn't say that it's always correct to keep it for the Murktide, but in doubt, and if you can keep the DRC in check somehow, then it makes totally sense to wait for the Murktide. But on the other hand, you also need like a threat and a clock. So here the opponent is on 13. He got a couple of beats, but only from 2/1/1s. So the Avish Reclaimers, for example, the Reclaimer wasn't able to attack at all. So
Yeah, I
he was
think
too
it's
far
most
ahead.
likely what you mentioned. They have good matching hands, and that top deck at that point in the game, be it the DRC or be it the iteration, really put them back into the game. The Murktide wasn't really that big. A 4/4 Murktide wasn't representing that big of a clock, because if I remember correctly, we were at 13 life, but just drawing into so many threats after we reset the game was too much to fight for.
Yep. And maybe it's also the explanation why in the beginning of the game we were wondering about why he binned the Delver, and could be possible that they already had the second DLC in hand, but didn't have a good time frame to play it out. But usually I would say when it's a 3/3, he should have been able to play it earlier. So a bit of strange time. If he chose to play it exactly in this turn, he played it out. But on the other hand, it could explain why they don't chose to get the Delver. Um, but on the other hand, they could have also wanted to be aggressive and wanted to attack with Delirium, and probably could it also have a Murktide in the opening hand.
Yeah,
So
that's
filling the
also
graveyard
possible.
makes more sense. So I believe he had the Murktide relatively early and the DRC, and didn't want an additional threat at that point to um, fill the graveyard early. And if I didn't Bojuka Bog the turn when I used it, then he would definitely cast the Murktide in the next turn. But then instead he had the DRC. Um, with the expressive iteration, they put cards into the graveyard, and then in the next turn, they already had Delirium again,
Yeah, so
and was
basically
able.
the Bojuka Bog play was nullified. That's the problem.
Yes,
Well, it wasn't nullified. It's just it made the Murktide a 4/4 instead of a potential 5/5, 6/6, or 7/7. But they resolved the Murktide, which is what that matters. Even if it's only a 4/4, it's already is already capable of going past the endurance. So it's a big problem for us.
Yeah, exactly. So finding an additional endurance or somehow handle the Murktide would have helped a lot here, but didn't really throw that good from the top then, and still didn't really had that much turns. So I was already at 13, and then um, yeah, they had too many card selection here. I would say they could sculpt their hand after that, and they also won a turn when I opted to use the Once Upon a Time and then search for the Reclaimer because they put the Reclaimer on the top. Maybe there's also a chance that they first get the Endurance, but that wouldn't have changed that much because the Endurance would have keep the DLC in check, but they still had the opportunity to fill the graveyard relatively fast again, so maybe it could stop one attack with a DLC, but I didn't really wanted to play the Green Sun Zenith into the days, so I thought that finding like a Alistar Shepherd, for example, or Reclaimer was more useful in the situation, and finding the Endurance was also okay. So in this situation, I had the opportunity to just search for another creature with a Zenith.
Yeah, but I think given our opponent's draws, there weren't much draws that would have changed the outcome of this game. Our opponent drew very good.
Yeah, I
So
can see a multiple Reclaimer, and would also needed to just do that all under Shepherd to be uncounterable. So in this situation where I opted to cast the Cradle and then played other creatures, for example, if I had the opportunity to cast two Reclaimer or so, then it would be in a completely different story because then with the Reclaimer I would have had a very good clock to prevent or raise them. And then in the next turn, maybe they needed to spend a couple of resources for my board, and then I could have maybe resolved the endurance or just uh, slowed them down with Wujukabok. But as you said, so their draws were very solid, and
very good. Yeah.
so
Anyways, very good performance by you. I can totally see you being a little bit unlucky by facing Delver, which is probably the matchup where you are allowed to make the less amount of mistakes. Facing it in the in the top eight, basically, because we can always take a loss in the tournament and still make top eight, but after we are in the top eight, are not allowed to take a single loss. But still, I would say very solid play by you. I think the highlight of the challenge, in my eyes at least, was definitely the game versus um, Jeskai, because it was very hard to navigate for me personally. And I think it will be very good for everybody to see and learn. So congratulations for the top eight.
yeah, thank you, Inigo. So your words mean a lot to me. So it was very good to have you today. And I would be glad if we can repeat that in a different time. So I'm not really sure how I want to do that in the future, but I would like to do that for me personally because I noticed that seeing those games and those lines give you more information and you can notice your own faults or improve your plays for the future. So I totally recommend to doing a reflection of the tournament, I would say, for yourself, especially for the challenges because um, there are some special matches and you're not playing that much matches in this challenge, so it is not that time consuming, and it's also oftentimes there are also very strong players in the challenges, a couple of times in leagues as well, but so I can totally recommend this to you as well, and
Yeah,
um, hope you enjoyed it and
I
learned
enjoyed. Yeah, yes,
some
I
new
was going to say.
things.
Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed very much. Thank you for having the patience to answer all my questions. It really helps me. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, then have a nice night, Inigo, and see you next time.
See you.
Bye bye.